And it means either you didn't know what you were doing, or perhaps you neglected to observe what you needed to have done.
We'll hear from both sides of the House ahead of the beginning of the third session of Parliament. And Top Story is brought to you by Vodafone and Prime Insurance. Rest assured, you are insured. My name is Ernest Menu. Now, we have less than 24 hours to the beginning of the third session of the 8th Parliament. As you may know, the House rose on a very acrimonious note, condemned by many as a result of the passage of the controversial e-levy. There were promises to mend the bridge and make compromises before the House resumes to, among other things, ensure the smooth passage of the e-levy. But with just a few hours to go, there seemed to be no sign of unity or compromise on the outstanding issues. Tonight, the minority has reiterated its resolve to vehemently oppose the bill. Member of Parliament on the Finance Committee, John Abujinapo, says the economy is on its way to a total shutdown if urgent steps are not put in place to salvage it. However, imposing an electronic transaction tax is not the solution for him. He told the town hall in Kumasi his side of the House have more questions for the Finance Minister.
And I bind the country as a human form, monetizing the belts. Yentimi and two more questions. Public sector workers are some more over to my dance. Yen Mama salary increment of 4% in 2021. And I remember 4%. Meanwhile, inflation was 11%. And Yamamo air cost by 11%. Which will work at you and your income air cost by just 4%. And what you know, a bank they introduced a COVID levy only for 3.5%. Almost increasing VAT flat rate at 4%. Almost the pollution and sanitation levy 10% on diesel, another 10% on petrol. Almost the energy sector recovery levy 20% on petrol, 20% on diesel. Almost the financial sector levy 5% on all banks. Almost the energy recovery levy, almost increasing by 20%. Price stabilization levy, almost increasing by 40%. UBPF, almost increasing by 164%. Boss margin, almost increasing by 200%. Fuel market levy, almost increasing by 233%. These are taxes that are with up to 2021 cash says you pay as tax in na bibia eboya na cash says Ghana for more sacrifice my available. I think that's the question we ought to be asking the finance minister and his team. So despite all these sacrifices, why do you want to implement the e-levy? Now Mr. Ramo, any e-levy no go. Almost a benchmark revenues now. The man who so can for cantamanto for gojo for near him. Ye reverse no. Ye reverse mo who surprises a cost by more than 100%. Kenya millions and millions people the poor muja a poor mututua. Nka by now ka benchmark revenues ye the remo anam.
So that's the Yape Kusogu legislator speaking there at the NDC Town Hall in Kumasi, and will be live there shortly to bring you more on this. But he's also been speaking about the debt to GDP ratio, which is currently nearing 80% with a low revenue. He says that puts the economy on the brink of collapse.
As of September, Ghana, a moving from 120 billion. Accord 341 billion. September 2021. This is in the budget. Enti ekane say yentimi nso aka no. Yekomu bu. Ye wo hwia enye yie. Nya asechire ne say aban we e di 214 billion ana abeka economy beto ye no. Now, you will be a friend of debt to GDP ratio. and about 80%. Ghana for you now, including Nkwala woman ne, abofra ya won ne. Uche ye kanimu a, obia edeka 11,133 cedi. This is how incompetent this Akufo-Addo administration has led us to. Now, Obasanjo who said Ekano Edia, 2021. 2021 in 9 months, Yeka Ekosro by 50 billion. Ekano sen Yekano Koeno. Echen Ghana sika nyina because our total revenue as of September na enro 50 billion. And so now Ekaye deno up more than 50 billion. President Akufo-Addo make hyper and they decided say you call Eurobond. Eurobond no is just a 10. It says you come on nani ako bobosia e dia beye input djuma. And then for Sewofa President Mahama, President Kufuor, President Mills, a kaya bo Eurobond amanane. O can mean na bomu. All these presidents, President Kufuor, the 8 years, President Mills 4 years, President Mahama 4 years, it is 16 years now. Busia omuboye $4.5 billion. President Akufo-Addo, Nansanya Obaye, Ononkwa Bobusia so far 12 billion.
Let's go to Kumasi now. Nanaya Ojima is our man there. He's at the town hall in Kumasi organized by the NDC. Nanaya, first of all, a quick translation of what Jinapo has been saying about the debt to GDP ratio and the debt stock, what this particular government has added on.
So according to him, the NPP government has borrowed more than any other government in the history of the country, but they failed to invest the money in capital projects. And this is one of the reasons why Ghana's GDP is so high and it's making the country in a very poor, it's putting the country in a very poor line, especially when it comes to issues on the economy. That is why the NPP would want to take the e-levy to save the economy.
Now, he's not the only one who's been speaking at this town hall in Kumasi. Other MPs have also mounted the stage to speak, to address the people. We understand Elizabeth Ejare is one of them. What exactly did she say?
So, according to her, the minority in parliament says they will not have anything to do with the negative impact of the e-levy should it be passed. According to her, they have 137 members of parliament on the side of the minority. The majority has 138. So if both sides should get full complement of the House, it is likely that the majority will have their way by passing the e-levy into a law. And according to her, it has a severe impact on the country. So if the majority should have their way, obviously they will vote against it, and it is their way of telling Ghanaians that they will have nothing to do with the e-levy if it is passed. And she also said that, in her estimation, about 170,000 young people who are in the mobile money business will lose their jobs because a lot of people will find other ways of sending money through instead of using the e-levy platforms. Let's listen to her.
It is a young Russian big you don't come now. Now you print my buy the task with your way back. You can't more the tax now by back. Now, yes, NBC 4 years. You pay your best so Adibia and your how a PC any year ever Ghana and nothing I see. 2 years and so you will web platform. Yanisa. It's another by and Quebec and say, oh, your president. The comfort e ho hiaye enti no se otukwan na nko da jet man ka yepe nanso so yakọ masika no enso saa elu saa kind of lifestyle no nti ngebe se ni se on for plane na ne boefo ana se yaye de na ewo ho na other president ni befro no a bi omokoba boko no ka on frɛ no a na ofrɛ no asika ne bebree beka ama na ye de opa o hia e-levy. And Kaibesa Manane who say, AD for any special assistant for na yeti omokano, and who name fast for. What's your moswa? Sikani baby beka. Amanka E-levy on ya. Say, Yentia, ye don't come I won't rush a big german. Ye again say, E-levy, a costro never for man. Ye penny than say. Ye share justification no na ne kanwa entoya sun papa. Say them be can no say what the Opeso yemra, what the bill ne beba. Bill no, what the BBF memorandum beba. Memorandum basically gives you the justification for bringing that bill, which will culminate into an act. Now, you share memorandum and another buy, and that's them say Ghana hire bro 80 million now. And what say the timidity tax. And so more, or my so betiano, crowd mutiano, a 2.4, and about 56,000 people penna. Oma di omo pa abase ombeti tax enti se okomo moso dia obeti agi gie nyina yesika na refi se odo ampo si dipa 2.4 etia eti za dipa 2.4 na etia no osan yemumu na obeyi omo afima na no obesan agi omo bio.
That's Elizabeth Ejari. Nana Aljuma is still with us on the line. Nana, a quick translation of some of the suggestions she's put out there for government to take instead of imposing an e-levy.
In summary, she wants government to rather cut expenditure, limit the number of people who are working at the presidency, and also president going for a cheaper jet whenever he is traveling outside the country. And for these are the alternatives that she's proposing that government can use to replace the e-levy that the government wants to take from the people.
Nana Ojima, thank you very much for bringing us those details. But over the weekend, the Majority Caucus also held a workshop, and among other things, they spoke about this controversial e-levy. The Majority Leader, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, was surprised at the pushback from the minority. Here's why.
It's a difficulty for me when people maybe are kicking against the e-levy. When you know that in the passage in the adoption of the motion to approve the budget, that is economic policy and budget statement of government, which contained the e-levy as a policy, we approved of that. So it means that the first step has already been surmounted. And then the receivables from the e-levy have been factored into the various estimates that we have approved for all the sectors. That is the second stage that we did. And then thirdly, when we encapsulated everything into the appropriations bill and passed the appropriations bill unanimously, what does it mean? You have approved of the e-levy. What is outstanding is now to back the e-levy with the enabling legislation. So when you have done all these three and you turn around to say that you're opposed to the bill, it means either you didn't know what you were doing or perhaps you neglected to observe what you needed to have done. Either of which is dangerous for you as a member of parliament. Really arouse any controversy. But you are not dealing with people who are ordinary people. So that's where we are.
Majority Leader Oseche Mensah Bonsu. Let's go on to the phone lines now, because this is beginning to take another dimension. Other political parties are beginning to wade in on this. We'll be hearing more from the minority that has been speaking today in Kumasi, shortly interrogating some of the issues they raised today. John Jinapor will be joining us shortly. We'll also speak to the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Kweku Kwaten, on what this form will take in terms of the passage. You recall that before Parliament rose, they wanted to pass this. Their recommendation was for the e-levy to be passed on a certificate of urgency. Want to find out what is going to happen tomorrow when the House reconvenes. But like I mentioned, other political parties are beginning to wade in on this. Tonight we're hearing from the CPP that says the e-levy is inevitable. Let's speak to the chairperson of the party, Nana Akosua-Frimpong. She joins us on the line. Madam, thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. You are saying the e-levy is inevitable and Ghanaians must embrace it?
Not really, in the sense that I am already in the payment system and I'm already running a technological company. And what I'm saying is that e-levy has come to stay. The idea of digitizing cash and moving cash electronically is something that can change. However, over the years, we have allowed the telcos to actually sort of rob the country, blind and or clearly. So what we are suggesting is that the e-levy, they should just take 50% of what we are paying, the 1%. There shouldn't be any dispute. Start with 50% and then down the line make it 70% before we move on to any other level. Because the e-levy technically is taking, not even the e-levy, but whatever levy we are being levied, already by the telcos, is already taking 1 CD from every 100 Ghana. So from every 100 Ghana, after a while, it drops off from the Ghanaian pocket.
But that is not taxed to the government. The 1 CD, the 1 CD I pay on my 100 CD transaction is not taxed to government. That is transaction charges fee that I pay to the telco. That is not going to the government.
But that's exactly my point. But there is the government that is running this country, and we are saying that the institutions and the regulators should not just sit down for us to be robbed so that we go ahead. The e-levy is not different from the levy you are paying when you pay your 100 Ghana. That they take 1 CD out. We are saying that instead of asking me to pay an extra 175 CDs, just take 50% of that levy. It's as simple as that.
Well, government wants to pass this at 1.75. What is your position on this? The House reconvenes tomorrow. What is your position on this?
My position is simple. I'm not backing anybody's position. I'm proposing a solution. And I'm saying that no matter what position they take, the 50% that the telcos have been charging us 1%, that is too much. Government needs money, and I appreciate that government will need money anytime. Government should take 50% of that.
Very well. Thank you very much, madam, for your time. That's all time will allow us. We are grateful. That's the chairperson of the CPP, Nana Akosua-Frimpong, there, joining in on this conversation with another proposal on this controversial e-levy. But we're joined by the Deputy Finance Minister, John Kumah. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Top Story. Tomorrow, the House reconvenes. Before the House rose, we were given assurances that you were going to reach out to the minority on this controversial e-levy. It was our hope that some compromise will be reached before tomorrow. But tonight we're hearing from the NDC MPs who have been speaking at a town hall in Kumasi that they are strictly opposed to this. What happened to the negotiations behind the scenes?
Yes, thank you and good evening to you. Like you rightly stated, we now have to be able to reach out to our friends and colleagues in the other side, with the hope that we could have a compromise. But it appears the political stance on the e-levy is firm, and they are not in any position to negotiate or to bring down their stance on the e-levy. So there's no problem with that. It's a democracy. We sometimes agree to disagree. The assurance we want to give on the part of the majority caucus is that we are equally determined that when Parliament resumes, as much as we are negotiating, we also want to send a clear signal that government will go ahead. The majority side is prepared to pass the e-levy. And the e-levy portends a lot of benefits to our country. I was surprised when I listened to my honorable members I heard the Leonard Elizabeth Ajari saying that if the president can take different aircrafts or jets in his travels, it will be enough to replace the e-levy. And it's so amazing that the government in waiting can have such a proposal, because when you
the crux of her submission was for government to cut down on expenditure. Essentially, that was what she meant to put out.
The finance minister last week announced a 20% cut in expenditures, so that we'll be able to match pace with revenues. So for you to come with an alternative that the president can change his aircraft, it will be enough to replace e-levy. It shows the lack of alternative propositions that the NDC is putting out there.
But it also appears that you have remained very uncompromising in this, because I hear you say that in as much as you want to engage tomorrow, you are determined to push this through. That's is sounding of another acrimonious, another controversial session in Parliament tomorrow, because the minority indeed started with a no e-levy and eventually gave in to about 1%. What happened to that?
Well, that 1% was again taken out again to 0.00001, and you have heard them today. We are prepared to negotiate, but like I said, it doesn't mean that negotiation will bring you the expected results that you are going to agree at any point. What we are hoping for, that even though we disagree, we will all show decency and maturity in our disagreement, and that we are not going to disgrace ourselves in Parliament again by resorting to violence and unreasonable means of expressing our disagreement. I think we should go about that.
But how is that supposed to happen, Mr. Kumar? How is that supposed to happen when we are well aware?
To go back to Parliament to fight again, right?
I don't expect a showdown,
okay,
but knowing the strength of the numbers you have in the House and what transpired before you rose, it sounds like things may not go down well, especially when you say you are so determined and you want to send a signal to the other side that you're going to pass this.
It doesn't go well, and we may disagree, and majority, like I heard Honorable Elizabeth Ajari saying that if we come there in our numbers in 138, we will surely pass it. That is the essence of democracy. Once you have the numbers, you pass it, even though another group may disagree. In a football match, if you win 1-0, you get all the 3 points. So it doesn't matter that the majority caucus has only one person extra than the minority caucus. But we must not resort to violence and uncivilized means of resolving our disagreement, okay? And that is what I'm saying. I'm adding up to what the Honorable Ajari has put out there, that it's about numbers. If the majority thinks that it should be passed, we must all go in that spirit of democracy, determined to hold on to our stance and try to convince each other. If that fails, let the decision of Parliament hold in the spirit of democracy, that we can disagree, but let the majority have their way. That's the essence of what our expectation and the expectation of the country is.
The recommendation
we are
of
not
the
expecting to go into a boxing brawl in Parliament.
Hopefully not. But the recommendation of the Finance Committee before you rose was for this to be passed under a certificate of urgency. Will that happen tomorrow? Are you going to proceed with that tomorrow?
Well, the need for that is even elapsed, right? Because we laid that a long time ago. All you need is just 48 hours of notice, which has passed. So we can still go ahead without the certificate of urgency.
Should we expect the finance minister in the House tomorrow?
Parliament is resuming tomorrow. We are yet to see the business of the week. Like I told you, the finance minister is still determined to do a lot of consultation. He may not, he may even take this week to do further engagement with both caucuses and see if we can still do a last-minute consensus building on the e-levy. We should not be antagonistic of each other. We should continue to talk, even in the spirit of disagreement. And like I said, if it gets to a point where we can no longer agree, let there be a peaceful process of decision making, and then we move on. It's one Ghana. We cannot tear it apart, and that is my hope for tomorrow when we resume.
Do I hear you suggest that this may not be on the business of Parliament tomorrow in order to buy time for your boss to buy some more time to engage the minority?
Well, business of the House is always determined on the first day when we meet. The business committee will have to meet and set the business agenda for the week. So until that is done, I cannot definitely say that tomorrow we are going to go strictly on the e-levy. But I believe that the Honorable Ken Oforiatta is still seeking to engage the minority and all the necessary stakeholders ahead of the vote. And so we may likely see the first week of Parliament resumption on further engagement and not in a rush to push anything through.
Well, let's see how that pans out. Thank you very much. That's the Deputy Finance Minister, John Kumar, there. Join us here on Top Story, brought to you by Vodafone and Prime Insurance. Rest assured, you are insured. My name is Ernest Menu. Top Story is up next after these messages.